I'm Kimberly Carroll. I am the Director of Animal Justice Academy. I just want to thank all you good-hearted folks for being with us here live, and welcome to those of you who are watching our replay. I just want to say that Pierre and Kaitlyn and I and Neves have all just come from a retreat, an animal justice staff retreat, and I don't think my mind's quite back yet. It's still back at the lake in the retreat. So I'm gonna just give you a little bit of background on these two before we get going. Kaitlyn Mitchell is the Director of Legal Advocacy at Animal Justice, where she works to stop the spread of gag laws in Canada, improve legal protections for animals, and defend the rights of animal advocates. Prior to Animal Justice, Kaitlyn worked for over a decade as a public interest environmental lawyer. Her practice focused on promoting environmental justice and legal recognition of environmental rights. She's appeared before numerous courts across the country, including the Supreme Court of Canada, and she's joining us today from Winnipeg. Kaitlyn, welcome.
Hi, Kimberly. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, always a pleasure to have you, my friend. We also have joining us Pierre Sadik, who is Animal Justice's Government and Legislative Affairs Counsel. Pierre has over 2 decades of legislative affairs experience with various organizations seeking stronger laws to protect animals and the environment in Canada. Pierre has also conducted similar work in Washington, D.C. for a national public interest advocacy organization. He practiced law in Ontario for over a decade, and Pierre is joining us from Ottawa. And Pierre, I should mention, has a dog and 2 rescue cats. And Kaitlyn, what are you up to now? How many are in your household?
I've just got 3 cats right now. I feel like
Cats, yes.
no,
And
there's
2
a little
children,
bit of room
2
there.
human children.
And 2 human children. Yeah.
Well, welcome you two. We are about to embark on a big action over the summer, a big mission to get ourselves introduced to the new parliament or reconnect to those MPs that you have been connected to in the past that got reelected. And so I really wanted to bring on Kaitlyn and Pierre to get us really stoked for this and really give us a training about what this new parliament is looking like, sort of what Animal Justice's plan is for strategizing how to, get animal issues sort of front and center, and then what you are all going to really step up to help us in. So Kaitlyn, I think we'll start, first of all, Pierre, I just didn't even let you say hello. How are you, Pierre?
Oh, I'm good, Kimberly. Hi, everyone. Really a pleasure being back and speaking to the people out in the, grassroots, helping carry the message and influencing our legislators.
Yeah, Pierre, it's we've got a good crew and we're going to make them even more effective today. So thank you for joining us. Okay, Kaitlyn, we're going to start with you and have you give us a little bit of a lay of the land. Where were we in terms of animal issues and bills before the election was called? Set us up kind of where we were so we can take off from there.
Well, fortunately and unfortunately, I guess, we were starting to see some good progress on some really key bills. So I'm glad that momentum was there, but it is sad that 2 of the main bills that we were working on sort of died. But just to back things up a little bit, so in June, I think it was June of 2023, we had a pretty big win. We saw Bill S5 passed, which was a bill that amended the Environmental Protection Act, but the piece that we were working on was some provisions to phase out toxicity testing on animals. So that was really a big win. We were working really hard to pass a bill to end captivity of elephants and great apes, hoping to add some animals to that bill, big cats. But that was Bill S15, and I think probably a lot of folks on this call have seen some content about it, probably heard us talk about it. But that was a bill that followed, many private members' bills in the Senate over the years. It was introduced as a government bill in November 2023, and because it was a government bill, we were pretty excited, thought it had a really good chance of passing. It took a really long time to get out of the Senate. So it finally did, though. It was a little bit of a different bill because it was a government bill introduced in the Senate, whereas usually the government, folks are probably more familiar with seeing MPs debating bills because that's usually how it starts. But that bill finally made it out of the Senate on December 17th, 2024. It was headed for the House of Commons, and then Parliament prorogued. So that was really sad to see that bill die. And
That was
then,
especially sad for you, Kaitlyn. You've been working so hard on that bill. Like honestly, Kaitlyn works night and day, has been working night on and day on that bill for so long. So like, I don't even know how you didn't implode.
you know what? It really did. It hurt. But I think the good news on that one is because it was, and I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but it was a government bill. So, I'm still very hopeful that we'll see the government pick it back up again. But we did make so much progress, and we had like such long and extensive study of the bill, the experts that were trotted out from various sides. It just felt like so much work was done. So it really was a shame to see it stop. And then the other one, of course, that's near and dear to my heart that I work on probably even more was Bill C-355, which was the bill that was going to end the live export of horses for slaughter.
Yes,
I know that's an
more
issue.
so.
Yeah, I know that's an issue so many people care about. And that was really disappointing too. So we pushed really hard to have, that was a government commitment. Sadly, we never saw a government bill, but we did get a private members bill introduced by MP Tim Lewis, which was great. It was introduced in September 2023. So much excitement. It passed the House of Commons in May of 2024, headed to the Senate, and then it just sat there. So that was really, really disappointing. It never even made it to second reading vote just because of delay tactics that were employed there. But again, that one unfortunately died as well. So that was really hard because there was really no reason. It was in the Senate since May. There was absolutely no reason it couldn't pass. So those were the two key bills we were working on. And then another thing that we were doing too that a lot of folks on this call might have known about as well was it wasn't a bill, but we were working really hard to have conversations with Health Canada, Finance Minister about making sure that there was funding for the CCAAM, which is the Canadian Centre for Alternatives to Animal Methods at the University of Windsor. That center is our only national center dedicated to non-animal testing methods. And unfortunately, because of the lack of funding, unlike institutes in other countries that have designated government funding, they don't have any. They never did. And so they had to shut their doors in the fall, which was really, really sad to see. So we were working hard to make sure that that institution got the funding that it needed and could open its doors at a new facility, hopefully in Ottawa. But again, those discussions kind of ended with the government falling. And so now that's another thing that we really do need to pick up again.
Yes, and for the folks here, that is, we've had Dr. Charu Chandrasekhar on here lots, and so that is her institution, and we have not given up, so just so you know. And one thing that I think is maybe important to talk about, actually, we'll come to a certain senator when we're talking about what the future is. So, Pierre, let's talk a little bit about the new government. Okay, for a couple of years, we were fully expecting that the Conservatives were going to win, and knowing how the Conservatives have voted on a lot of past animal issues, we were kind of counting on not being able to get much of anything passed federally. So what do the results of this election mean to animals, would you say?
Yeah, so just a bit of backing up, a little bit of context. We had a good run. The Liberals came in 2015, and Kaitlyn has already mentioned some of the stuff, but when you look back historically over the decades, the last 10 years have been really good for us in terms of the issues we care about. Shark fin ban, criminal code change to make bestiality a broader offense, cetacean captivity made illegal, keeping whales, dolphins, and so on in the country, toxicity around animal testing beginning to be phased out. And then we had those huge promising bills in the last couple of years that Kaitlyn's already talked about, the horse export ban and the elephant and great apes in captivity. Then 2 years ago, oh my God, it looked like Pierre and the Conservatives were going to come in. And so, I mean, I'm not partisan, but they have consistently stood in our way on the laws that I just listed. They've been on the other side of that. And that is something where we had, for the last 2 years or so, pretty well decided, time to give up hope federally. Let's see what we can do in some of the provinces where we have some governments that are maybe a little more open to issues that animal-loving people care about. Maybe we work at the municipal level a little bit, talk to some cities, some mayors, and so on about making some progress there. Because federally, we had been up against, we'd seen what was coming if the Conservatives were going to win. The name Senator Don Plett has been mentioned, and he seemed to have made it his personal mission to oppose just about everything we did around animal protection. In fact, he ended up loving calling us on the floor of the Senate, us and all of us on this meeting, animal rights radicals. He used that term so many times. In the House, there was an MP named John Barlow. He thought he was going to be the next agriculture minister.
We
He
thought
probably
so
was,
too.
if Polyev
Yeah.
had gotten in.
Mhm.
And he also made it his mission to stand in the way of just about everything we did. Now, the
Mhm.
Conservative Party of Canada, they do that because they have a large rural base, and there is, unfortunately, some of it's artificial, but a bit of a polarization there between rural base and metropolitan centers in Canada. The Liberals don't rely so much on a rural base, and so that's why we are cautiously optimistic, to throw out that overused term there, with the prospects for the government under Prime Minister Carney. Now, I've worked in the environmental field for a long time before I came to the animal protection field, before I saw the light and joined this battle. And I had run into Mark Carney several times in connection with my work on the environment. And I see that as a good sign, because he was on the right side of environmental issues, in particular climate change. He was quite progressive. Some of you may know he led several prestigious international finance climate change efforts. He led various international efforts seeking to get banks to stop financing harmful climate projects. And that tells me right there he's got some progressive bones in his body. So I'm holding up out hope that he will have a soft spot in his heart for animal protection and animal welfare. We also have a few animal champions in the Liberal caucus, not a lot, but probably let's say, being optimistic and generous, there's half a dozen people, so 6 people of the 169 Liberals in the caucus who get and to varying degrees care about animal issues. And we're going to grow that number. You're going to help grow that number by talking to your MPs, but that's the kind of direction we're going in. Final point, because the Liberals are this short of a majority, as we all know, they're going to need the NDP, and the NDP have historically been quite animal friendly, or they're going to need the Bloc, who are not as negative on animal issues as the Conservative Party of Canada. They're going to need them to pass legislation. So there again, we have a wedge. We have an opportunity with those two parties, particularly the NDP, to get the Liberals to do a little more than they otherwise would for animals.
Excellent. Thank you, Pierre. And, someone's saying, as far as who's dedicated to animal issues in Parliament, that's embarrassingly little. Yes, it is. But these are hardcore, like these are really dedicated people, like people who have really been active. And the wonderful thing is, when we have worked on a specific issue, using our AJAers and our supported, our wider supporter base, in reaching out to MPs, we've managed to get a lot more MPs on board per issue. So that's a great thing. And Kaitlyn, one of the other things that I think is important to acknowledge as a plus for this Parliament is that, yes, there was no change in the Senate because they're not elected, but there was a big change that one of the biggest stumbling blocks for us in Senate changed as of May 14th. A holy day. So tell us a little bit about this. Pierre kind of hinted at it.
Yeah, so we have a long-term, I mean, I guess foe is the first word that comes to mind, but basically the Conservatives leader in the Senate, Senator Don Platt, he seemed to really have it out for animals or animal protection groups. And as Pierre mentioned, it was really problematic. I think the only animal protection bill that I think he didn't try to stall to death was the bestiality bill, if memory serves correctly. So that was a huge problem. And without getting into the weeds of it too much, there's a lot that senators can do to delay bills, just preventing votes from happening that need to happen before they can go to the next stage. But that's particularly the case with private members' bills, because there's government bills the government introduces, and then there's private members' bills that MPs and even senators, they can introduce kind of on their own volition. It's not as common for those ones to be passed into law, but it does happen. But unfortunately, when it's a private members' bill, there's not really many tools, if any, that the government can use in the face of delay tactics, unlike a government bill. And we knew the second that the horse export issue was taken up as a private members bill, that that's what was going to happen. We hoped that we would be able to push past it, and we tried. We really did try hard. But we knew it was going to be a problem. We knew it was going to be a risk, and that's why we really, really want to see that introduced either just as a regulation or as a government bill this time, and not a private members bill. To be clear, if it's a private members bill, we will do our absolute best to make sure it actually does pass this time. And I'm sure that whoever takes over as the Conservative Senate lead, they might take a similar approach to Don Platt. I don't know. That has yet to be seen. But we are cautiously optimistic that there will be less procedural shenanigans at the very least.
A lot of cautious optimism going around this crew.
If I get too optimistic, I'm going to be so sad when it doesn't happen.
I know,
exactly. So we gotta,
No, absolutely. So Kaitlyn, what is our plan so far at Animal Justice to try to get these issues resurrected in the Parliament? I know it's sort of beginning days, but we do have some plans. So what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's beginning days, and we're really trying to suss out the new government and see what's possible in the short term. I have a lot of optimism for the longer term, but I think as many folks on the call in Canada will know, in the short term, the media, politicians, everyone's so zeroed in on issues like sovereignty, tariffs, cost of living. So we're up against a bit of a battle there, just in terms of saying, yes, those things are important. Don't ignore what's happening south of the border, obviously. But we can do these other things too. So that's a bit of a challenge. But I think what I would say is, on the horse export bill, since that's what I was just talking about, the good news there is it really doesn't have to be a bill. Like you introduce a bill when you need to change a statute. And that's one way this could happen. You could change a statute, you could introduce a new statute. Like there's different ways you could do it. But you actually could pass this down by regulation. And so, in my opinion, when I think right now the legislative agenda is going to be so focused on these other very important issues, I'd really, really hope that we might have some more success pushing forward on regulations. We'll see. Bill would also be great, but I think regulations would be faster, and I think regulations would have more of a chance of happening soon. On Bill S-15, actually, technically, it could be done by regulation. I don't think that's going to happen. That's the captivity bill. But we are reconvening our discussions with the coalition of folks we are working with to try to, again, get the government to pick that back up. That was a government bill. It was a government priority. And so we're very optimistic there. The interesting thing, too, about that bill is we have the regular folks at the table, us and World Animal Protection and all the crew of animal protection groups. We were actually working closely with a number of zoos on that bill too, which, as it's not a natural fit. Our work does not always overlap. but we were able to find some common ground there. And I think that that made the coalition stronger. So I am really hopeful that we will have that broader coalition working on that bill again, because I think it increases our chances of moving it forward and getting it on the political agenda. And of course, with the funding issue for CCAA, you know, we're gonna have to pick those discussions up again. You know, it doesn't need to be a bill, but right now, you know, again, the financial agenda too is so focused on, you know, building pipelines, like getting new projects ready, combating tariffs. So again, it is an uphill battle, unfortunately, to get non-animal testing methods back on the financial agenda.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to have to keep pivoting, basically, is what Kaitlyn's saying. But this is why we're going to need your support as much as possible, folks. But first, before we get into the action, Pierre, can you talk a little bit about this infamous fall budget bill? And I mean, there's been some controversy over that the last few weeks, but more intrigue, and why that could be a big deadline for us in getting the ear of our MPs.
Yeah, sure. So as you all know, budgets typically come in the spring. This time the government has announced that the budget will come in the fall, and there's some common sense to that. It's a new government, and we are also trying to figure out where President Trump will ultimately land on tariffs, as he tacos constantly on tariffs. And so that gives the government a little more time to figure out how to use the budget. So we're going to use the budget as well, though, to
Yes,
protect
we are.
animals. We're going to try.
Mm-hmm.
So federal governments often use budget implementation bills, particularly omnibus budget bills, as vehicles to pass non-spending related legislation. An omnibus bill is legislation that amends or enacts multiple pieces of legislation, typically tied together to a single frame, a single theme. But in the context of budget implementation, the unifying theme is, of course, the federal budget itself. But omnibus budget bills have expanded to include provisions that go beyond direct fiscal measures. So now this type of bill lets government bundle various legislative changes, including those entirely unrelated, things maybe like animal protection, into a single bill. You may have heard of Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. Well, this is a
Yes.
little bit similar. It's our chance to use the system to our advantage by putting our little issue quietly onto a big important issue such as the federal budget.
Mm-hmm.
So by putting animal protection measures into an omnibus budget bill, we can speed up the legislative process and reduce detailed scrutiny by anti-animal protection legislators of our animal-friendly measures. This is a political strategy if there's something contentious that you want to have passed, and certainly the recent past has shown that trying to ban live horse exports to Japan or trying to ban the captivity of elephants and great apes is a contentious issue. So this is a way to piggyback that onto a bigger item. And it also reduces scrutiny because the broad and comprehensive nature of omnibus bills will limit the detailed examination of the individual provisions when the bill goes to committee. And a budget, the other good thing is, so in addition to the bill being huge and the committee not having time to scrutinize something like an animal protection measure that we may have had put in depth, but also a budget bill will go to the finance committee, not to a committee that may have some expertise on animal protection issues. That also makes it easier and more likely that the animal protection measure will stay in the bill and pass.
Wow. Yeah. So a sneaky bill that's usually used against us, we are going to try to use. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. I don't love sneaky bills, but if they're going to be out there, we got to use them. So Kaitlyn, I want to just sort of talk about where AJAers come in now. Okay, where our team comes, our larger team comes in. So we're launching, folks, a big action for the summer, for our peeps, you, to reach out and try to meet with your MP or one of their team members to appeal to them to champion animal issues, especially these three. This is a really great opportunity, if you haven't already, if you've got a new MP, to introduce yourself and just make it be known that, animal issues is important to you as a constituent. But, but specifically these goals that are so close we can taste it, to put them on their radar and be able to ask for them to take a step further with them. So, Kaitlyn, why are AJAers reaching out to their MPs such an important piece of this puzzle?
Well, I think that constituents give a perspective that is just different from our perspective, at least in the eyes of elected officials. And I would say too, like when you're speaking to your MP, you don't have to talk about the different vehicles, is it going in a budget bill? Is it going in a regulation? You don't have to do any of that, right? They just want to hear what issues are important to you. So they want to do things. If you're an elected official, you want to do things that will get yourself re-elected. Of course, we all know that. So what our hope is that MPs will hear not only, is say banning live horse exports, not only is that the right thing to do, or something that national groups are asking them to do, but it's actually something that their constituents want them to do and their constituents expect them to do. So that's really the piece of the puzzle. And it's such an important piece of the puzzle that we're hoping that folks on this call and others can help us with. We don't know when the next election will be, but these people will probably be in power as MPs for 3 or more years, depending on how things play out. So again, meeting with them early on is a great way to get these issues on their agenda early on, but also start to build a bit of a relationship. So that you can meet with them in the future. And even if your first meeting, you're not 100% aligned on all issues, which can be expected, really focusing on at least getting the issues on their radar and then building that relationship so you can continue to have discussions about the issues that matter to you. And we're really focused on the issues that we've been working on, but there might be other issues that you're really passionate about and that you want to speak with your MPs about. We've got there's no shortage really. So, you should really just think about the issues that really matter to you, because I think that really does come across when you're speaking to an MP. And then I guess the last piece too that I should mention is that those meetings can be a great source of information as well for you, and if you share it, for us. So for instance, I've learned a lot from my own meetings, obviously, with MPs and senators and staff about what was stalling that horse export bill. I would learn pieces of information that way, but having folks meeting with their MPs has also been really informative, because often what will happen is the MP will say, oh, let me see what's happening there. Let me see why it's not progressing. And then they will come back often and explain to the person, oh, I'm told, like recently we keep hearing new reasons why it has to be a bill, why they can't pass it by regulation. But hearing those reasons, even if, frankly, most of them are not true, it helps me to know what the block is, and then we can kind of pivot our strategy too. So it goes both ways. You're giving information, you're speaking from the heart, helping MPs to understand what matters to their constituents, but it's also an opportunity to get information from them about what they're hearing and what's going on. Why is this given issue stalled, or what's likely to happen? So it's really great both ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, you two both know that you've had a lot of experience with meetings, and that when you're in a one-on-one or 1-to-2 person meeting, they tend to speak a lot more freely than they ever would publicly. So there usually is a lot of intel that you're not going to get any other way. And just so AJAers know, is when you're telling us what's happening and little pieces of information you're getting from your MPs, that's getting funneled right over to Kaitlyn and Pierre. So that's why like your meetings are really important. So I want to get Nevis on right now. So Nevis Illich, our mobilization manager, our new mobilization manager. Some of you have met her in our past lunchtime lives, but Nevis, you want to join us? And Nevis is going to talk a little bit about this particular action that we're going to do. Hello, darling. How are you doing?
Hello, good. Thanks for introducing me, Kimberly.
Yeah, so we've got a big summer mission coming up. So want to give us a little bit of an overview and maybe give us a little peek at the AJA action brief.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to start off with saying that, if you're thinking that meeting with your MP is just absolutely nerve-wracking and anxiety-inducing, you are not alone. A lot of people have that experience, and it's okay. We've created an action brief to make this experience as easy as possible for you. So I'm actually going to share my screen with everyone so you can take a quick peek with it. One moment.
So just so, well, Nevis is getting this. So Nevis is going to be really heading up this action, really trying to be available and to everybody for help and support, and also to sort of keep folks accountable. So it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be really great to have somebody really steering this action. It's okay if you don't have it, Nevis.
Had to re-enter my password. It's not letting me share it now because of the system setting, but that's okay because I can give you kind of a lowdown on what's essentially, you're going to get information on the budget bill, and you're going to get information on the 3 issues that we're really focusing on right now. So that's the live horse export, raising some funds for alternatives to research within Canada, and looking at banning the captivity of great apes and elephants within Canada. So you're going to have all the info on talking points, on how to set up your meeting with your MP. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I'm driving for you. There we go.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so you have your overview, your action items there, and we're literally taking you through this step by step on how to make that call, what to say when you're making that call, on how to present yourself. And then as you go further down, how to follow up. Like, what if you're trying to meet with them and you're hearing silence? And then finally, we have information on what to do during that meeting and how to go about that conversation, what to say, what to bring up. And, like we mentioned, it's really about building a relationship and advocating for the animals, but also getting some information back to us. So absolutely no pressure if you don't touch on all of these different points. If you're looking at some inspiration or ideas around what to talk about, again, we have those specific points for each of those issues there for you. And, the last thing on this action brief, and one of the most important pieces of this action brief, is right at the bottom. Please make sure to send us an email back after you either schedule that meeting or have that meeting with your MP, and let us know how it went, right? Let us know the pieces that you put on the table. Let us know what they said back, if they brought up any concerns. If they were receptive, if they weren't receptive. There's really no wrong answer to all of this. It's just more information that we can use to move these issues forward. I'll be managing that email account, so I want to hear from you. If you have any questions, concerns, if you're feeling a little nervous about it, that's okay. Email me about that too. And again, because we know this can be so nerve-wracking, we're actually scheduling a practice session for folks where you can come join us and actually practice setting up that phone call script and having a session where we can put you in groups of 4 and you can have that time to actually practice what you're going to say to your MP. And of course, we're going to talk about, how to ease that anxiety and have a piece of that session where you can ask any questions or debrief how it felt, all that good stuff. We really want you to feel like you're not alone within all this, right? You have a team within Animal Justice that's here to support you. And the best thing you can do is just try, right? Encourage yourself to have an imperfect meeting, an imperfect experience. That's what it's all about. If you're an AJAer who's not from Canada, there's also something you can do. We want to make sure that everyone's included within our actions. So if you're not from Canada, we also within Animal Justice have an automated email that you can send, and that will include a message to our Prime Minister where you can advocate to have all those different animal issues just be prioritized.
Yeah, and that's in the action brief as well, isn't it, Neves?
It's not within the action brief, but
Okay.
I believe Kirsten just shared the link to it.
Oh, okay, great, perfect.
Yeah.
And we'll add that to the action brief too, just in case. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. So that's Wednesday, folks. Wednesday at 7. We're gonna, we've gotten a lot of the info here, and we're gonna get more from Kaitlyn and Pierre, but it'll be a chance for you to just really, with sort of very receptive, supportive people, be able to kind of do some test runs, okay, in small groups. So we're going to have like 4 people in each small group, and you'll have 2 of you be, playing the MP and their assistant, and 2 of you playing the people that are going in, that you're going to be sort of talking from the other side and pitching these ideas. And it's just a really great way to give it, give it a run so that you're not so nervous about it. It's really helpful, I think, for a lot of people that have tried doing these practice rounds. It just demystifies it a little bit, gives you a little bit of confidence. Even if you mess it all up, it's great. It's good to mess it up here, and then you'll be set for the real thing. And so, I think we put the registration there into the chat for that. Excellent. Okay. So just register for that, and there, it'll be really casual. It'll be an hour, and it'll make, if you've been sort of putting off meeting with your MP and always thought about doing this, this is the chance to do it. So, okay. So while we are here, let's just talk a little bit about the process of reaching out to your MP. Pierre, first of all, a couple of questions. When you first reach out to your MP for a meeting, would you suggest a phone call or an email? Or both?
No, I would suggest an email.
Okay.
I like to start with an email. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Got it.
So, and in the email, I'm just going to do a little 101 here, meeting your MP. Purpose you want to put in is discussing animal protection in the new parliament. You may not want to get as specific as the budget bill. And, you suggest a 30-minute meeting, or they typically make them 30-minute meetings in any event, ideally in person.
Yeah, okay.
And the reason I say that is it's better to get a read on the MP, their body language. You can be more persuasive. You can see what's on their office walls. You get a sense of what kind of a person they are. Now, that's not vital to get there in person, especially distances make that impossible. But if you're in the same town, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, they'll set up a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting or something like that.
So is that sort of their default, Pierre, that they'll try to do an online meeting?
Depends on the MP. Some MPs really like their constituents and like spending time with them.
Right,
Others, don't want to keep their distance, and they'll do something virtual. I wouldn't get caught up on whether it's personal or virtual. And in fact, if you're the kind of person who would feel more comfortable being in the familiar surroundings of your own home, then just go for a virtual meeting. These days, they're 80% as effective as in-person meetings. But those of us who like that sort of eye contact and reading body language and seeing whether on the wall there's some mounted trophies of animals they've hunted, or maybe some something a little more gentle, then you try to get an in-person meeting.
And so you can request a virtual meeting if you want, like if you have mobility issues or something like that. Yeah.
And then, common sense stuff like if it's a Zoom meeting, join the meeting a bit early to fix any technical issues. I'm getting into some of the weeds here, but this is important because your first impression matters. Keep your background as neutral as possible. Mute your mic when you're not speaking, that kind of stuff. I also always like to say that, I hope nobody's upset by this, but be neat and presentable. Lawmakers will be biased against anyone who's dressed in a messy, inappropriate, or radical way. So you're not on the police barricades at a protest. You're meeting an MP halfway. They have to dress up almost every day. So maybe something kind of business casual clothing is best. Again, we're doing this for the animals. So, meet them halfway. If you can't get a meeting with your MP, don't worry. Meeting with a staff member is pretty good. Staff members have a responsibility and invariably report the details of whatever you discussed to their boss. Or if everything fails, and if you're on social media or something like, or that kind of thing, Facebook, social media, or checking their website, try to catch them for 5 minutes at an event. They always post where they're going to be because they want to meet constituents. Catch them there, buttonhole them there for 5 minutes and talk to them about the issue there.
Mhm. Yeah, and honestly, we've had so much luck just with animal justice and with AJers, with staff people, with team, like just
Yeah.
finding the right, a lot of team members who might be vegan or might really be sympathetic to the cause. And so, yeah, so never discount other members of the team. So I want input from both. And I was just going to add to this, Pierre, as far as the email goes, because we often do encourage phoning if one is going to try to get a message through to their MP as opposed to trying to get a meeting. We always recommend phoning, okay, because that makes more impact. It counts more as far as sort of the numbers in the office go. But yeah, if you're set on trying to get an MP meeting, then you can start with email and then you can ramp it up, right? If they don't answer your email, you can phone, or you can phone and then follow up with an email. So just really try everything. And also if you, you'll start sort of getting to know how your MP and their office works, and you'll start, being able to figure out the right formula. So both Pierre and Kaitlyn, I just wanted to ask you a couple of, nuances. So when you start the meeting with an MP, like, how do you recommend people start? Like launch right in because they're busy people, or do you take a couple of minutes to try to establish some friendliness and some commonalities?
Definitely the latter. I'm a professional lobbyist, and I try to get whatever politician I meet with to like me. Um, and if that means dialing down my issue a little bit, soft pedaling it because they're on the extreme end of, let's say, the conservative end of the spectrum, then I'll do that. Again, I do it for the animals, right? That's what we're ultimately there for. So try to get them to like you, be personable, be friendly, and so start off with some chit chat that doesn't have anything to do with the issue, the ask as we call it, that you've come in there for. And I like to look at what they're up to, let's say the day before, the week before, look up on social media or on their website. And even if it's absolutely zero interest to me, I'll talk about, hey, I saw you were at such and such, or you did such and such at an event, and chit chat that way for a couple of minutes that way. And then it naturally flows into but here, by the way, is what I want you to do for us or for me.
Yeah, so social media is a really great tool to just create some common ground. And yeah, it's important they like you. So Kaitlyn, what about you? Like, I think one of the things that people get really nervous about is like, oh my God, there's all these talking points, and oh my God, this is so complex and all that sort of thing. If folks are afraid of not being able to remember a lot of info, first of all, what would you say to that? And second of all, what are some of the key things that you'd like them to impart?
Yeah, I would say like don't worry about not being able to remember a lot of the information and details, because honestly, the MP is probably not going to remember all the information and details, right? If you get to the meeting and you're like me and you're like, 8,000 horses have been shipped since you promised to do this, like 22 are dying every year. Like they're not going to remember those numbers. They'll get the sense of urgency, but that's not really what it's about. I do think that, kind of back to Pierre's point about starting off the meeting, you might be surprised, like even if this is an MP who um, is not on side on most issues or all issues, you could probably find some, like they probably have a dog, or they probably have, like, there's probably some sort of animal entry point there that you can get to, or, on horses, they probably like horses. Most people like horses. So like, you might just be surprised how that natural kind of connection can form some sort of commonality that's an entry point, even if it's not going to be commonality on everything. And then, as I said, I think, you don't have to, ideally you talk about you're able to get to all of the issues, but, I do think that there's something to be said for kind of focusing on what, for you, like what's your personal passion. If you only have time to talk about one issue, pick the thing. Like if it's horse exports, then just kind of familiarize yourself enough that you feel like you understand the broad issue. Again, you don't have to have the numbers down, but like, the key issues there, like it's pretty simple. This is something you promised to do about 4 years ago, hasn't happened. Really disappointing. That was a promise to Canadians. It was a promise to me. I am a voter, and that and just kind of express it that way and say, not only like it hasn't stopped, the numbers are actually going up. So, what are you going to do? And so you can also kind of leave the meeting with that. Like if they inevitably, your MP is not going to be the one that on their own is going to save the day, right? But if you can get them to leave the meeting with some sort of commitment, like, yeah, often they'll leave the meeting and say, yeah, you're right. Why can't we do that by regulation? We could maybe just do that. Let me get back to you on that. So it's good to kind of leave the meeting with some sort of commitment or suggestion that there'll be further contact, or that, they don't know the answer to a thing, that they'll get back to you. And then that's something you can use to follow up and kind of maintain that relationship in a more organic and friendly way.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Pierre?
Sure. Someone just asked a really good question. Do I need to register as a lobbyist if I'm lobbying on an issue that is an issue of the day and animal justice has put me up to this? And the short answer is no. Volunteering a little bit of your time, especially the volunteering part, if you're not paid staff, thankfully you do not have to register as a lobbyist. So go for it.
Can I, Pierre,
yeah.
because there's more to that question. Dennis asked, some of us on the call were candidates in the last federal election, mostly for the Green Party and the Animal Protection Party. Do you feel that would be a plus or a minus in reaching out to a meeting with our Liberal MPs? And that's where they're wondering about, does it fall under the category of lobbying because of being a candidate?
I think that's it. I don't know. That still does not require you to register under the federal lobbyist registry. And secondly, I think that's a huge plus, because as much as all politicians of different parties may have different positions on important issues, they all have in common the fact that they were out on the campaign trail and they were trying to sell themselves and their issues to the public, and that creates a bit of a bond. And that happens in the House of Commons as well. You don't see that as much in the media, but politicians from different parties were in the hallways, not in the room where they're shouting snippets at each other that they try to get on social media. They're actually buddy, because they're all part of a really crazy system that demands long hours and being yelled at by the public. And so they do share a common thread there. So that's great.
So respect,
having been a candidate, that's a fantastic plus.
Love that. Can I ask, somebody else is commented on something. I thought it would be good to have a comment on this. Again, we're giving our opinion, folks. This isn't the, be all end all, but these folks have been at it for a while. So, so someone was talking about bringing their laptop to do a PowerPoint presentation. I think Robert was joking about that, but somebody else was talking about sending an agenda ahead of time. Like, do you think that's a plus or a minus when you're a constituent? Like, is it better to just be organic, or is it better to be organized?
I would be organic. Otherwise, they think that some organization, like some animal rights organization, put you up to this, which of course didn't happen, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So the more natural it is, one of the biggest things that somebody wanting to meet with their MP, it doesn't happen very often, folks. And when you go in there, to that politician's mind, you're representing hundreds of people. So, yeah, we don't want you to be too slick. Okay. I just want to see if there's any other questions. You know what? While I'm just seeing if there's any other questions, folks. Kaitlyn, Pierre, do you have any tips or reassurances anything else that you'd like to give folks who are like basically shaking in their boots about meeting with their MP? Anything else that like maybe that you remember from when you first started meeting, or stuff that's made it easier for you that you'd like them to know about?
Kaitlyn, go ahead.
No, I don't, I can't think of anything additional. I mean, really, I think the focus is, being yourself. As Pierre said, like a professional version of yourself, potentially, and you might have to share part of yourself, but like speaking from the heart, like you don't have to, read our materials and go in with, our materials in your mind. Like, what are the issues that matter to you? And maybe they're not on our list. Maybe you mentioned horse exports, but there's some other thing, you've been seeing in the news, all these animals being evacuated from northern communities or not being evacuated, right? Maybe that's an issue that you want to talk about. So there is some space there. I mean, ideally, MPs are hearing the same high level messages and they're getting that there's priorities, but that doesn't mean that has to be it, So I just don't want people to feel constrained either. Like whatever issues you want to talk to them about, you should feel comfortable doing that. And if there are ways that we can support you better, you have some question, you read our materials and something a little unclear to you on one of the other issues, feel free to reach out. I know, Nevis and Kimberly and often they'll send emails to us as well if they're not able to answer things. Like we're here, like, full disclosure, I do miss a lot of emails because my inbox is a bit nuts, but I do my very best and we all do our very best. And
We
so,
hunt her down if we need to.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's just also really important. One question that I do sort of just want to plug in there quickly before I give you last word, Pierre, is it is good though to leave an ask, right? When you go into a meeting, to have an ask, whatever your topic is that you're bringing in there, your issue is, what is the next step you want them to take? Now we have, for these 3 issues, we've given some examples, like we want the, CCMA, we want that added to the budget in the fall, or we want them to talk to, their minister of whatever. So like, I think it is important to have an ask. Am I right in this, folks? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And you can say, and you can, again, you can be organic about it, right? If you're talking about horse exports and they say, oh yeah, you're right, I'm really on side, I'll chat with my colleagues. You could say, great, can I follow up with you in a few weeks and just see how those discussions go? Or can you let me know what they say about, just going ahead with a regulation, for instance? Like you can kind of think about the ask and what feels right in the moment. Or you can just ask, can I count on your vote? If that comes up, like, we'll see. Or maybe you meet with an MP and they're basically like, I will not be voting in support of that. So you have to pivot a little bit. You do need to, unfortunately, be a bit flexible.
Yeah, I mean, if you're meeting with a conservative MP who's just like not interested, you could even ask, what are there any animal issues that you are interested in? I think that's a really good question to ask, And somebody is asking, Pierre and Kaitlyn, do you have just a couple of extra minutes to take some more questions? Are you you have a meeting? You okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do.
Okay. So one of the questions Marion is asking, is it better to go alone or in a small group?
Better to go 2 people is the ideal number, because
2
then
people? Yeah.
2 people helps keep the conversation flowing. Plus one of the people can scribble notes while the other, if the MP is saying a lot of interesting stuff, while the other one's, looking them in the eye and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because sometimes people organize sort of posses to go in, but I feel like that's almost a little bit of a waste, bringing in 8 people together when 8 separate people could go have a meeting. Yeah. Okay. Agreed. Yeah.
But 2's not necessary. Just it helps you feel a little more comfortable as well. But one is great too. It's just a little bit better with 2 in terms of the process, I find. That's all.
Amazing. Okay, someone is asking, what tools, techniques can be used to track various animal-based bills progressions in our government offices? So any tips around that?
Well, I mean, we track them, but like I'm just trying to think of a formal tool. Like for me, like before this meeting, when I wanted to remind myself, like what steps happened and when, I just went to the Legis info page. So if you Google a bill, like let's say right now you Google bill C355 horse. So a bunch of different stuff will come up. One of them will be the text of the bill itself, but then there should be a website, Legis Info, and that basically in like chart form shows you introduced, first reading, second reading, third reading. And so it's really easy to follow that way. It doesn't tell you the why, right? If you look up 355, you'll see first reading in the Senate, May, I don't know, I'm going to say like 27th or something, 2024. And then you'll just see second reading didn't happen. So it doesn't tell you the why of the information, but if you just want to know what steps are happening and when, then that's an easy way to find that.
Thank you so much, Kaitlyn. HB is asking about Bill C355 in the Senate. How are senators allowed to stall the bill like that until it dies? And I know that's a bit of a bigger question, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the devices that they pull out.
Yeah, so I'll answer it, but then I'll just pull up. There's some like very interesting like articles about this that are, you know, more informed than I'll be on the fly. But basically there's the Senate rules are very complicated. I had like a very quick introduction to them, and I wasn't familiar with them until this, and I still didn't understand. Like I can't count how many times I was on the phone with Senate staff and I was saying, can't you just call the vote? Call the vote. And they were like, well, you know, you can't really do that. And so anyway, very complicated. But basically so without speaking to the issue more broadly, I can say on that bill, what happened is you have to have the bill voted on at second reading before it goes to committee study. In that instance, as the critic, Senator Plett said, I need to do speech. I'm the critic. I do a speech before the bill goes to committee. Not ready to do my speech yet. I just really want to study this issue. I'm doing such a great job. I'm going to go on a field trip to a feedlot. I'm going to go on a field trip to the airport. I'm going to do all these other things. So I'm just trying to do my very best job. So I'm not
All
ready.
on the taxpayer's dime, by the way.
So, and he did, and the word field trip is my word, not his. But so that's what happened there. And then we were like, well, call the vote. Like you can't just do that forever. And then there's, you know, and part of it's a relationship thing. So if you call the vote on somebody and they're not ready and it's kind of seen as like a dirty tactic, that could come back to backfire on your bill. Like, so there's just like a lot of background stuff. But I would say that's BS, because on one of the bills that we were working on, the federal ag gag bill, C275, which was a conservative bill, similarly private members bill, that one got to the Senate, and guess what? Don Plett called the vote right away. Not even a critic assigned, never mind a critic giving a speech. So these things, like, there are rules there and they can be manipulated and used. And if you're somebody who doesn't particularly care about honesty, integrity, maintaining relationships with your fellow senators, you might be more willing to plow forward regardless of those rules and burn those bridges. And most senators don't really want to burn those bridges. So, yeah, but anyway, I'll put a National Post article in the chat in case anyone else is interested, because it's not just this issue. This has come up on a number of issues. Basically, the Senate's become like the place where private members' bills go to die.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for giving us a little run through, Kaitlyn. That's very informative. M Love is asking, how can you add the like say Bill C355 to an omnibus bill? How does that go about happening? Like, is there something we can do to have that added? And I think that's just the general lobbying that we're doing is basically, if you make it important enough, they're going to figure out the easiest way to get it in.
The short answer is what technically happens is most bills are amending existing laws. And so all you're doing is you put a fairly small provision in the omnibus budget bill, amending an existing law, which would then make banning live horse exports illegal. So you're not introducing a brand new law, you're just amending an existing law. Typically that's how that works.
That would be our ideal.
Yeah, and I would say, like, I mean, we used the word sneaky earlier. Like, it's not really sneaky. Like, I wouldn't have suggested adding horse exports to an omnibus bill last Parliament, because I don't think that would have been appropriate. That's an issue that should be studied. Cosmetics testing on animals was added to an omnibus bill. Made good sense. Everyone was on board. Industry's on board. All parties are on board. Who really needs to study that? We're not even doing it in Canada. Like, so like that was fine. Like, it was symbolic. It was a victory. That was, I think, fine. There was no pushback. The reason why I think now is an okay time to suggest horse exports go in the bill is it's already been studied, right? It was before Parliament and the Senate for over a year, went through extensive study already in the House of Commons. All the witnesses from industry, all the witnesses from our side, veterinarians, they all came out. So it's not like we're trying to like shoehorn some new issue in that parliamentarians can't study. We're saying like, this is something you've already studied. You promised to do it. Canadians want to see it done. You know, this is just a faster way to do that rather than starting completely over and probably seeing something similar, which will be delay tactics. That's not democratic in my perspective. To be a senator and just prevent a vote on a bill you don't like, that to me is not democratic. If you want to vote against a bill you don't like, absolutely. You don't support that bill, vote against it. That's what you should do. But anyway, this is just a way that's like something that's already been studied.
Yeah.
Let's see it move forward.
I love getting Kaitlyn all riled up.
I get
Pierre,
really
it's
mad when I
amazing.
think about that.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, one last thing, Pierre. I didn't give you a chance to give, what would a tip or reassurance be that you'd like to give folks who are a little bit nervous about meeting with their MP?
Okay, if you're a little bit nervous, just remember this. Be yourself and stay calm. You have every right to talk to your MP. In fact, it's part of the democratic process. So show that you're confident because we're fighting the good fight. You're fighting the good fight.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Now, I just want to ask the folks that are left here, it's still quite a good, healthy amount of you. Who's gonna meet with their MP, folks? Let's put yes or hell yeah or whatever into the message. I see some hands up. I love it as well. Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I'll reach out to mine. Yep. Okay. This is what we love to see. I got a hell yes. I got a yep for sure. Okay. This was very helpful. Karen said, thank you so much. Yeah, fabulous, folks. And remember, we are here to keep you going on this. Okay. So we're going to keep note of everybody who said yes, and we are going to put you on our list, and we are going to start our sort of our communications with you, because we're going to get some intel from you. All right. We. Can we please give them a big AJA thank you? Oh, awesome. Okay, we're the army behind you, and looking forward to this big summer mission, folks.